The Texas A&M Aggies have been absolutely crushing it in the transfer portal thus far. But is there anything left for them to do?
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are Locked On the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Matt Galatzan. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I am joined by Zach Dimmitt today. Zach, we are almost done with the transfer portal window for players to enter, which ends tomorrow on Friday. I guess at midnight on Friday. I'm not really sure of the time frame of that, but it is the entry part is coming to a close. Players will be able to sign though throughout the rest of the spring semester and even into the summer. If you're really looking to find a guy at the last minute, but for the most part, things are likely starting to wind down. Texas A&M right now is sitting with 18 commits, the #1 ranked portal class per On3. They filled a lot of holes too. Really rebuilt the trenches, got a #1 X wide receiver, couple linebackers. We're going to go, through everything again, kind of like we did the other day, but it kind of begs the question, is there anything left for them to do? Are they done making additions in the transfer portal? I think for the most part, the answer to that question is yes. I don't expect them to go out and, make another home run signing of somebody, like a major difference maker or a big time starter or anything like that. Now, obviously, that depends on who enters before the deadline on Friday. But for the most part, it seems like the Aggies are prepared to kind of stand pat, add a couple of more depth pieces here and there, and then kind of move forward. And it's kind of nice to have this all pretty much over and done with within the first 2 weeks of this whole thing.
Yeah, even everything, from kicker, which was a major problem, at times this past season. The Aggies have addressed almost everything you could imagine. Offensive line, secondary, you get another standout wide receiver in Isaiah Horton. They just added a linebacker, which was one of the only remaining things that we had talked about previously that they needed to address, and they got that with TJ Smith at Houston Christian. Yeah, you feel pretty good about this if this is the way it ends for A&M. I don't know. Maybe you go in and you try to get a veteran backup quarterback. You don't necessarily need to do that. They haven't gotten one in this portal class quite yet, so. Do you trust Brady Hart to be the backup to Marcel Reed next year? I don't know. Miles O'Neill obviously transferred out. So he was the backup when Marcel Reed was injured briefly against Texas. And so, how does the coaching staff view Brady Hart as a potential backup next season? We'll see what happens there. You still got Helman Kasuga as well coming in. So, but do you trust him as a backup? They got Jacob Zeno last offseason out of UAB. He had a ton of reps under his belt, but he, only threw 5 passes. And that was a veteran addition out of the portal last offseason. But do you get a guy, that you trust to come in and back up Marcel Reed just in case of an injury so you don't, completely derail your championship hopes? I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think Brady Hart is an interesting prospect, but quarterback is really the only thing that I think they can add because it's really been all around a terrific portal class. Not much you can complain about. When you missed out on Cam Coleman, it's like, oh, we're still going to be good at wide receiver if you're an Aggie fan. But then you go get Isaiah Horton, and what an absolute, great commitment that was. You're probably spending less than you would on Cam Coleman, and you're getting a guy arguably just as talented with tons of experience. So you got Ryan Henderson, who I'm pretty high on as the edge rusher out of San Diego State. We'll see what happens. I don't think it's necessarily a need for A&M to get another quarterback, but it wouldn't hurt. Some of the guys that we had talked about previously as potential options there as a backup quarterback have already landed with new teams. So it's just a matter of time to see what A&M is interested in.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Backup quarterback is something that I would probably add to this roster. Just a veteran dude who can come in a pinch, or potentially maybe another. I mean, I don't even think you really need another defensive back. The more that I think about it, but the only other position that I really think that should be addressed and still might be addressed is just a depth piece at running back that's more of a power back. Considering the guys that you already have on the roster and their skill sets, I feel like a bigger back who can get the tough short yardage, goal line situations, those kinds of things, kind of like a Le'Veon Moss type. Obviously, nobody that you find in the portal at this point, at least for now, is going to be as talented as Le'Veon Moss, and that'd be really hard for anybody to do. But a couple names out there that could make sense. I don't even know if Texas A&M is after these guys. I'd have to do a little bit of digging. But C.J. Miller at Mercer, 5'11", 235 pounds, out of Gadsden, Alabama, seems like an easy choice if you're looking to find a bigger guy. Ty Edwards out of West Virginia, 6'3", 212 pounds, another guy that just names that I see that are in the portal right now that could potentially fit that mold. But we'll see where it ends up going. I don't expect Texas A&M to make too much more noise going forward. They've gotten the pieces that they need. They have some players that are going to start for them. They have some players that are going to provide valuable depth for them. And they've also done a tremendous job at retaining their own talent. Only 11 guys that are leaving in the portal. They've re-signed Des Ricks, DJ Hicks, Mark Naboo just in the last couple of days. Obviously, Bryce Anderson coming back. A lot more talent as well coming back. But you've already rebuilt your offensive line. You've already rebuilt your defensive line. You've added the depth at linebacker that you need to make it through next season. And you've got a really probably a championship level secondary back there as well. And still one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC in Marcel Reed. So it seems like this team is good to go, and we are excited to see what they do. But we're going to get into this class a little bit, and we're going to go position by position and grade what we think Texas A&M has done at each position in the portal when we come back from this break next. There's nothing like college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I opened the Game Time app to look at upcoming college football games like the national championship game, and I was surprised at how fast it was to find great seats. The app is also incredibly easy to use. I went from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Let's give a quick shout out to our loyal listeners real quick, Zach. Thank you for making Locked On Aggies your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free Locked On Aggies audio stream, which means no ads, no commercials, nothing like that, except for the ones that we read ourselves, the live reads. And it's compatible with every major podcast platform you could possibly think of. You also get an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of Locked On Aggies. I'm going to be there, so you can come yell at me if you want to about the transfer portal, vent your frustrations, praise what you think they've done well, everything in between. So go to lockedonaggies.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more about that. Zachary, we feel pretty good about where this Texas A&M class is sitting right now in terms of the transfer portal. We mentioned in the last segment we feel like they hit pretty much every need they have. So I want to go through position by position group, grade what they've done so far, because I like I said, I don't think that there's another big swing coming in this transfer portal class as of right now. If anything, it'll be some additional depth pieces. But let's start at wide receiver. Obviously, the big addition of Isaiah Horton is the one that kind of stands out above the rest for what Texas A&M has done so far. He was the number 2 receiver in the transfer portal behind Cam Coleman. I think that this is an absolute home run. I mean, obviously it's not Cam Coleman, which is kind of a bummer, so it gets a little bit of a ding on a grade from that. But for me, it's a solid A.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. Not quite A plus, definitely an A. I've mentioned it multiple times on the show that you're saving a lot of money with a guy like Isaiah Horton compared to Cam Coleman. You're spreading that wealth quite literally. You're spreading the money across the roster, being able to grab more players for depth, grab potential starter pieces. Great move there with Isaiah Horton. He entered the portal, and it wasn't too long after that he set up a visit to A&M, and boom, and then he signed and committed. So love to see that. Joining alongside Mario Craver, Ashton Bethel Roman, that's going to be quite a receiving core next year. It hurts when you lose Casey Concepcion, but adding a guy like Isaiah Horton, tons of experience, great move for A&M. I agree with you. A is a perfect grade.
Yeah, and then let's go to the offensive line real quick. Obviously, Texas A&M loses 5 of its top 6 offensive linemen, all to the NFL draft. Trey Zune, Armaj Reed-Adams, Chase Bizantis, Demetrius Crownover, Ruben Fothery, all gone. So you have to figure out a way to bring some stability back to that position. You still have Lamont Rogers on the roster. You still have a couple of other pieces there. Jonte Newman also went. He's now at the University of Texas. Interesting choice for an Aggie to transfer to Texas, but here we are. And you've brought in 4 guys who can start for you immediately and make a difference. Mark Naboo does return, but you get Tyre Adams likely to fill the left tackle spot. You get Cohen Echols to fill the left guard spot. Trevon Baugh to fill the right guard spot, and Wilcom Formby to occupy that right tackle spot. I like a lot of these additions. I wish they would have been a little bit more patient at this one. This is kind of the one spot that I don't think the Aggies necessarily hit a home run. Just looking at the grades for some of these players on PFF and watching a little bit of tape, they're still good players. They have SEC experience, and that's very valuable. And they're going to be very solid for Texas A&M. I just wish they would have waited maybe a little bit longer to make some decisions here. I'm going to give them a solid B plus though.
Yeah, you stole my answer there. B plus as well for me. You could argue A minus. The only reason I argue for an A minus is that you're adding 4 SEC guys on the offensive line, and I know that we're in a podcast covering an SEC team. Of course, we're going to talk the conference up, but I don't. It can't be understated. That you're adding 4 guys in conference to the offensive line. You're not adding an offensive lineman from Monmouth or Villanova, some FCS school. You know what I'm saying? So you're not adding from a group of 5 team. These are SEC guys, and I think that can't be understated. 2 guys from LSU. Cohen Echols on the interior, still got 3 years of eligibility left, so he could be here for the long haul. I agree with you. B plus is probably the right grade for the offensive line. You could argue A minus, but it all depends on how they perform this upcoming season. So still a long ways away to figure all that out, but yeah, B plus is probably a sweet spot.
Yeah. And then let's move on to the tight end position. I really love what Texas A&M did here. You lose Nate Borkacher, you lose Theo Melanostrom, Amari Nyblack. Mike O'Reilly, I believe, will be back with this football team. You obviously have Keati Armstrong coming in. But then you go out and you get Houston Thomas out of UTSA and Richie Anderson out of Fresno State. I'm a little less bullish on the Richie Anderson one, but he's a good player, don't get me wrong. But I am thrilled about the Houston Thomas edition. He's a very productive player. He's going to come in and compete for a starting position right away, and I think he's going to be an X factor in this offense next season. I'm going to give this one probably an A minus, I would guess. I'm not going to go A plus because it's not like you went out and got the number 1 player in the transfer portal at the position, but a solid A minus here. Really good job by the Aggies filling that need.
Yeah, A minus, whatever one you want to pick there. I'm with that for sure. Um, yeah, tight end was kind of like a weird position this past year for A&M. Tons of guys with a lot of experience, but it never really quite, worked out the way you'd expect. I know Nate Borgacher had obviously an amazing touchdown against Notre Dame, helped A&M win that game. But other than that, I mean, the production of that position just wasn't quite there as much as you had wanted, especially with tons of guys. They added like what 3 guys from the portal at the positions. So this is now 5 total players over the past 2 seasons at tight end that have transferred into A&M. So yeah, Houston Thomas, you like to see getting a guy from in-state. His name's Houston, after all. You gotta love that. So 1 year of eligibility left for him. He's got experience under his belt. I know UTSA didn't have the season they wanted to this past year, but that's still a great program under Jeff Traylor. So yeah, I think A minus A is good there. You'd like to see him, really be a pass catching threat next year. I think Richie Anderson may not be as much. He'll be a nice little depth role. But yeah, great pickup for A&M.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows? Richie Anderson might end up being the Nate Borkacher of this class, who we did not necessarily expect big things out of last season, and all he did was make big time plays when Texas A&M needed him most. So could end up being that kind of player. We'll have to see where that goes. Defensively, you go to the defensive line, and I think Texas A&M hit a home run in this department. Not just getting DJ Hicks back, not just returning, the young edge rushers that they have, and on the interior, the young players as well, like DJ Sanders and guys like that. I cannot tell you how excited I am to see Marco Jones in a bigger role next year on the edge as well. But they come in and they add a long-term developmental project in Brandon Davis Swain, who's still a very good player. He'll have 3 years of eligibility left. They add one of the top defensive tackles in the Big Ten, in Angelo McCollum, who will have 2 years of eligibility left. And then they go out and add CJ Mims from North Carolina, who will be entering his final year of college football. 3 really good pieces to help add to the depth of that interior, help with the run defense, help with occupying those gaps and things of that nature. And I'm going to give this one another A.
Yeah, I'll go B plus on this one, just because you didn't land a home run guy necessarily, which is fine. You don't need to, but B plus I think is a solid grade. Brandon Davis Swain, I think he could be a long term piece for this team. It may not show right away next year, but you look down the line 2 years from now, and maybe he's making a big impact. He's still relatively young, so. But CJ Mims at North Carolina, I think that's a big pickup as well. A&M got hit hard on the interior on both sides of the ball this offseason, and they definitely addressed that in a major way. And so it's hard to be mad about that if you're an Aggie fan. At edge rusher as well. I know that's not the interior, but with Ryan Henderson, Anto Saka, you add 2 edge guys. As Cassius Howell departs, I think Ryan Henderson's going to have a pretty big year. He may not get 12 sacks or whatever, lead the SEC, but A&M's defensive line, the edges, it's going to be scary for other teams to deal with for sure. So B plus is a grade.
Absolutely. And then, we talk about the edge. I didn't even mention the edge rushers that they got when I was talking. Ryan Henderson, I know you're real high on. Anto Saka. So really good players, really productive players, really talented players all along the defensive front. Now on to linebacker. Texas A&M adds TJ Smith earlier this week out of Houston Christian. Not the biggest, add in the world, but he is a depth piece and he's a talented player, so a solid one there. And Ray Coney out of Tulsa, another solid piece to help you, solidify the depth on in the middle of that defense at linebacker. He's a productive guy as well. Last season he had, just a low number of 128 total tackles in 2025 for Tulsa, just all over the field for the Golden Hurricanes. Love this ad for them. B plus again for me for the Aggies at the linebacker spot. I kind of wish they would have added one more body, but getting a dude with 128 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections, a forced fumble. I mean, this guy is an absolute production machine, and he's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I'll go B here. It's going to be impossible to just go into the portal and replace Scooby Williams and Torian York. I think that there will be a drop off at the position next year. That's not some like hot take or anything. It's just kind of what happens when you lose 2 guys like that. You're going to naturally have a drop off unless you just land the number 1 portal linebacker. So, Ray Coney, big numbers obviously at Tulsa, like you mentioned. We'll see how that translates. Same with TJ Smith. Houston Christian's not some powerhouse or anything like that, but he had a lot of experience under his belt there. It's to be determined how those guys will perform at the SEC level. You got to feel confident about their ability to hold things down. It's not going to be Torian York and Scooby Williams, that's for sure. But I'll go B. At the most, it's to be determined at that position. We got to see what happens.
Yeah, and we'll move to safety real quick, or just the secondary real quick, before we move on to our next segment. They add Tafweek Byard from Colorado, really really good player. They didn't do much else from that other than bring Bryce Anderson out of the portal. I wish they would have added a corner. This is another spot where I wish they would have done a little bit more. So I'm going to give it a B.
Yeah, just because they only got one guy in the secondary, I'll just go with an incomplete grade. It's hard to really evaluate it, especially at a position like in the secondary when you only add one guy. When you talk about the roster retention overall, I give that an A. But when it comes to just portal, it's an incomplete grade for me because only one guy. Tafweek Byard's going to be great, but it's just there's not much portal wise to look at there, but overall A&M secondary will be elite next season.
Yeah, championship level secondary for sure. All right, let's go to our next segment. We were going to talk some Buckyball. I've been promising you guys we were going to get into some basketball, and they have a big one coming up on Saturday against their arch rival, the Texas Longhorns. So we're going to talk about next when we come back from this break. All right, Zach, Lone Star Showdown B-Ball edition. This Saturday, the Texas Longhorns are coming off of wins over 2 top 15 teams in Alabama and Vanderbilt. Texas A&M is coming off of a disappointing overtime loss, but there's still very much room for optimism with this basketball game. Texas is a very inconsistent team under Sean Miller thus far. They've been playing better the last couple of games. I don't know how sustainable it is or not. We'll have to find out. But the Aggies are very dangerous offensively. One of the best three-point shooters in the entire country. Really great job of roster construction so far. It's played out very well so far for Bucky McMillan, and this should be a hell of a matchup for Texas A&M on Saturday.
Yeah, this is a very interesting matchup for sure. Texas, they were dead in the water. They got, blown out by Tennessee, blew the lead against Mississippi State at home in overtime, 0-2 in SEC play. And then they just, go ahead and, hit the road, upset Alabama, and then give number 10 Vanderbilt, its first loss of the season last night. So quite a turnaround for Texas. A&M and Texas were trending in 2 different directions, and now, things are changing a lot heading into Saturday at Moody Center. Aggie fans remember all too well the last 2 matchups between these 2 teams last season. The rosters are much different, obviously, but Texas hit a game winner with a few seconds left in Austin to win, and then they beat A&M in double overtime in the SEC tournament. So I know this is a completely different team, whole new coaching staff, but Aggie fans are really going to want this one. It's going to be tough. I think that Texas has some advantages in the front court. Modest Titus, he's their center. He's a young guy in his second year, but he just had 22 points against Vanderbilt last night. He was a major problem for the Commodores. They had no answers for him in the front court. He draws the most fouls per game in the country this season. He's about a 70% free throw shooter, 68%. So he gets the line quite a bit. I think that A&M may have some trouble with him down low. Federico is a a solid guy down low. I don't know if he'll have the strength to keep up with Boogie Titus. Federico is more of a shot blocker sort of guy. So I think where A&M could find an advantage, though, is with Rayshawn Agee. Texas does not have a lot of strength at the 4 spot, and Agee has a lot of versatility with his size. He can stretch the floor. I don't think Texas has an answer there for him. So I think that's the X factor for A&M. Texas has great guards: Jordan Pope, Tremont Mark. Dalen Swain is an absolute mismatch problem. So A&M will need to figure out him, because he's Texas's leading scorer, rebounder, assist guy, and leads the team in steals. But he's listed as a guard. So A&M will need to figure out what to do with him, because I think him and Agee on both sides will really make the difference in this one. I don't know who's going to win this game, honestly, Matt. I don't know, because Texas, they have 2 great wins under their belt and back-to-back games. But A&M, they're a great offense. They've had some tight wins in SEC play. I think they got hosed against Tennessee. They had that game in their hands and just lost it. The refs, had a bit to do with that. But A&M missed a few clutch free throws. Didn't get a few offensive rebounds that they needed to get. We could be sitting here talking about A&M being 4-0 in SEC play heading into Austin. But it remains to be seen. Texas is a talented team. Can they keep up the consistency? We'll see about that. I think this is it's a toss-up game. I think the 2 teams will split the series this year, regardless of which team wins at home. It's gonna be an exciting game for sure. I don't see a blowout either way.
Yeah, it's hard to see a blowout either way. I just don't believe in the consistency of this Texas basketball team right now. Maybe Sean Miller has kind of helped them turn a corner, but they were just so dreadful throughout the first part of the season and so inconsistent that it's hard to see them continue to win. But maybe he did something different. All I know is that Ruben Dominguez is an absolute demon behind the 3-point arc, 46.2%. Rayshawn Agee is going to be a problem for Texas as well. So exactly like you said, because they have a big problem at the 4 spot. So I'm really excited to watch this one on Saturday. And we will break it down on Monday as well, talking about what happened, scores, all that kind of thing. And we'll be back tomorrow to help close out the transfer portal as well. It's the final day to enter, so there could be some fireworks in terms of players planning to enter and some more commitments here and there. So we will see. Make sure to tune in to Locked On Aggies tomorrow for that. Make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast so you get all the latest episodes. You can find me on X at Matt Galatzan. You can find Zach on X at Zach Dimmitt 7 with 2 M's and 2 T's. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Aggies ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonaggies.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On College Football, and we will see you next time.